Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. We are in Amrutanubhava, chapter 7, Agnana Khandana, ignorance devalued or ignorance denied. And we saw last week that हिरवी तरी अज्ञाना जे ज्ञानाची नसे क्षोभना तय तरी काना खालीच दडे. In fact, if we think properly about the subject again, it will be seen that were it not for the substratum or adhisthana, kshobhana of pure consciousness or pure knowledge, even ignorance cannot be heard and therefore exist. And there some examples were taken that the example of a snake and the rope was taken, and it was told that the snake, the real snake which can bite, satyavastu, the appearance of the snake on the rope, that is mithya pratyaya, that is mithya meaning that which is existing in its own absence, and the use of snake as a mere word, just as one says the ghost will come, it has no valid meaning like the word Vindhyaputra, the son of a barren woman. And these were the points. This is how the world is expressing for us. This is how the snake is expressing. It is only a word. It is not something real. And then what was Ajnana? For the word Ajnanam, Ajnanam is absence of knowledge. Na vidyate iti avidya. And Ajnanam also means apurna Jnanam, means incomplete knowledge. Incomplete because it is gained through the limitations of the means of knowledge, such as the eyes, ears, thoughts, etc. So this was the second meaning of Ajnana for our understanding, so that we have a clear picture that the conclusion will be what? There is nothing called Ajnana. There is nothing called ignorance. Just because we have said Ajnana is the cause and desire and karma, kam and karma are the effects, does not mean that Ajnana is something. Just because we say space is the basis, and out of the womb of the space, air, fire, water, earth have come out. But what is space? It's absence. So is there anything called absence? Similarly, when we go to the word avyakta, avyakta means that which does not manifest. How do you know something does not? You only know whether a form manifests or... So when absence of the form is called as unmanifest. So the third type is the knowledge of absence. Thus, Ajnanam cannot exist without the substratum of knowledge. And even that absence, that silence, that nothingness, it also exists due to the substratum. Without the knower, the absence cannot be. You cannot have the word absence. You cannot use the word Ajnana if there is no person, conscious person there. And that conscious person itself is the substratum. And therefore, and we looked at the whole thing last week. I'm not going to go into every point that is made there. And in this chapter, Sant Jnaneshwara is trying to clarify that this Dvaita duality is not valid when talks about ignorance. See, in Sankhya philosophy, in the second last paragraph of the first verse, it is told, in the Sankhya philosophy, avidya, ignorance, is called anadi, beginningless. If Purusha, Prakriti and Jiva are all taken as separate and anadi, then one ends up with three infinities in Dvaita which can never be removed. So, this is the problem. This is the challenge in front of us. And this needs to be resolved. And that is how through through denying the ignorance, through denying the incomplete knowledge, in other words, showing us that we are always that which we are seeking. This seeking is in the ignorance, by the ignorance, for the ignorance, not for the truth. You understand the language? Uddharet atmanatmanam natmanam avasadayet. Raise yourself, by yourself, in yourself, for yourself. Here I am saying all seeking is in the ignorance, by the ignorance, for the ignorance. It cannot be for the Atma. Ignorance can never come to know the Atma. And where is the whole seeking? Itself in the limitations. And as long as our attention is on the limitations, we are far away from the conscious principle that we are. Continuing, Adasuni andhari khadyota deepti shidhari taise he latke vari anadi hoye. Just as the light of the glowworm exists on the strength of darkness, similarly, the beginninglessness, anaditva of the ignorance is mithya, that is, it does not exist in reality. So, the glowworm, in the daytime you can't see its light, only at night you can see its light. So, only in darkness the ignorance expresses itself. But actually it is not there. If one asks about the nature of ignorance, it is said to be anadi, meaning beginningless, without beginning. In Vivek Chudamani, the thought comes in the following sequence of logic. Ignorance about what? About Paramatma. Paramatma is anadi. Therefore, ignorance is also anadi. Here, Jnaneshwar Maharaj says that ignorance is anadi because it does not have existence. So, how can it have a beginning or an end? See, it's just how you put it. In the end, we have to be who we actually are. Not who we imagine we are. And all that imagination is due to limitations. Limitation of thought, limitation of senses, limitation of past, limitation of time, space, objectivity. So Jnaneshwar Maharaj says that ignorance is anadi because it does not have existence. Do you know what you don't know? Huh? Do you know what you don't know? No. Anadi. So how long you have not, for how long you have not known what you don't know? For how long you don't know that you don't know? Forever, beginningless. And the moment it comes to know, that very moment, it becomes available. That ignorance is anadi because it does not have existence. So anything that we perceive, know through our instruments, senses, mind, intellect, it cannot be something permanent. Know this for certain. You'll say, oh, the world is there before I was there, the world will be there after I go there. For whom? For whom the world will be there? For whom the world was there? You were not there before, in the sense at the material, empirical level, you were not there. And you will not be there afterwards, after the death. So for whom the world was there before and whom the world was there after? If you can answer that, story over. But we remain only at that level. That it was not there, it was there before and it was there after. We don't ask the question for whom. And when you ask the question for whom, you come to the substratum. When you ask the question for whom, you come to recognize. Your knowledge becomes, incomplete knowledge becomes complete knowledge. Because once you start analyzing, you will find you were there before, you are here now, and you will be there afterwards. That you have never been out of absence. You have never been missing in action. You were always there, the constant one. It was the instruments which were coming and going. In that case, a question props up. If it is not real, how then does it express itself? If ignorance is not real, if ignorance is absence, then how does it appear to be real? How does it express itself as kama and karma, as desire and action? How does it? Your example is taken. The glowworm makes its presence felt only by the support or the substratum of darkness. Although it keeps glowing during the day also, the glow cannot be seen. The darkness of the night is needed to establish its presence. In the same way, ignorance takes the support of the pure knowledge to allow its presence, although it does not exist. Understand? So ignorance cannot exist of its own accord. It needs the support of the substratum. The substratum is the pure consciousness, the reality. That is the Atman. So either you take the ignorance at individual level or totality. It's the same. Just like the space inside the house, individual house, or the space in the total universe. It's exactly the same. Same way. Exactly the same way. The ignorance is existing on account of some other constant principle without which it cannot express itself. In the same way, ignorance takes the support of pure knowledge to show its presence, although it does not exist. The individuality has no existence apart from the absolute, and any attempt to arrive at the absolute from the relative standpoint cannot succeed. This is a very important point which you, me as seekers have to remember again and again. And that is, as long as our attention is on the material world, as long as our attention is on the body, breath, mind, intellect, As long as our attention is on the Vaikhari Madhyama Pashyanti Para, as long as our attention is on the 6 chakras, as long as our attention is on the 5 great elements, as long as our attention is on the space-time objectivity, realization, abidance in the self is not possible. Abidance in the self is not possible. Because that which is limited cannot deliver the unlimited. Through the prism of limitations, of thoughts, minds, we are trying to seek that which is beyond thought and mind and intellect. And this is the loop that we are caught in. And we need to get out of this gravity of this loop of continuous thinking, continuous reading, continuous speaking, continuous listening. Then what to do? While listening, access the silence. While listening, the words are indicating that constant principle. Be that. Don't seek it. Be that. Because at any given moment, the individual consciousness by nature is the infinite consciousness. The individual space of the house is the infinite space. Our problem is, instead of being the individual, being the consciousness, we are thinking of the consciousness. That is where our problem is. We have to be the consciousness. And that's a very, very fine dissection. It does not happen just because you wish it. Because we are so steeply, we are caught up in this name and form so much. So the individuality has no existence apart from the absolute, just as the individual wave has got no existence apart from the infinite waters. The total ocean has no existence apart from the infinite waters. Similarly, individual consciousness has got no existence apart from the infinite consciousness. And any attempt to arrive at the absolute from the relative standpoint cannot succeed. What is relativity and what is the absolute? Absolute standpoint is there is only one. And he knows that, and the one knows the one without a thought. And what is relativity? Where there is two. There is always a reference. Where relativity is referential existence. Individuality cannot exist if the instruments are not there. See? Because individual is giving validity to the instruments, to the conditionings, to the limitations. And while considering these limitations and conditionings to be real, thinking about them, talking about them, feeling about them, being them, thinking that he is that, the body, he wants to know the absolute truth, the constant principle that he is. How is it going to be possible? It is not going to be possible. Even a relative experience of sleep, which is more potent, delivers potent bliss compared to dream and waking. Even to get to the sleep, you cannot sleep while your attention is on the waking world. The waking world has to go out of your mind. Only then sleep ensues. So how much more if you understand that principle, that until and unless the world doesn't go out of your mind, the obsession with the support, obsession with the panchakoshas, the obsession, and from the panchakoshas the entire world. Until that obsession does not go out of your mind, sleep will not begin. You have to be unhooked from Annamaya, Pranmaya, Manomaya, Vijnanmaya Kosh. Then only you get into Anandmaya Kosh, which is deep sleep, Anandamaya, bliss. Even more so, even that Anandamaya Kosh which comes and goes every day, the deep sleep which comes and goes every day, even that has to be transcended. When we take that as the support, when we take silence as the support, a gross silence, then we will remain in ignorance. Yes, you may go into samadhi, but it is still an aspect of ignorance only. The moment I, as the wave, disappears, nothing but the pure self, the ocean, the substratum remains. The moment the I disappears, the moment the wave disappears, what is wave? Nothing but water. An expression of water which has a beginning and end. What is mind? Nothing but consciousness. What is a thought in the mind? Made up of the material called consciousness. And what is that thought? It has a beginning and end. See? So just as the wave, when it disappears, there is only infinite waters. Similarly, when the thought disappears, what remains is not void. What remains is not absence of thought. What remains is not sleep, if you go to sleep. What remains when the thought disappears is the self alone. Therefore, that self is available between two thoughts, between two breaths. But we are obsessed, What is there between the two thoughts? There is absence of thoughts. Why don't you keep repeating to yourself, between the two thoughts, I am? There is conscious silence. Don't even say I am. There is conscious silence. Or if some stupid fellow asks what is between the two thoughts, don't answer, but be. Because any answer you give is corrupting that. This is what Sant Jnaneshwara is, Jnana Deva is saying, that although the scriptures describe ignorance as anadi, the anaditva in reality is borrowed from the pure self. So, what is the pure self? Anadi, ananta. What is ignorance? We say it is anadi, but it is not ananta, it ends. The moment you get knowledge of something, your ignorance about that thing ends. So that anaditva of ignorance is borrowed from the nature of the pure consciousness, which is beginningless and endless. When ignorance itself does not exist, there is no question of its being anadi or otherwise. See, how is the ignorance borrowing the support from pure consciousness, just as the glowworm without the presence of night, darkness, the glowworm cannot be seen as glowing. Exactly the same way, without the pure consciousness, the ignorance cannot be seen as expressing. And what is its expression? Absence, desire, or incomplete knowledge, desire and action. These are its expressions. When ignorance itself does not exist, there is no question of its being anadi or otherwise. But absence itself is nothing. Ignorance itself is not having any leg to stand on. So where is the question of it being anadi? It is I, the knower of ignorance, who is anadi. So, as I said before, that when the mind becomes quiet, when when there is a gap between the two thoughts, that silence, that absence of the thought, is it existing by itself, or it is existing? The absence of the thought is existing because you are. When we give importance to the thought or the absence of the thought, realization of the self is not possible. When we give importance to the one who is the continuous principle, in whose presence the appearance of the thought and the disappearance of the thought, the presence of the thought and the absence of the thought is coming and going. So instead of on the seat of meditation looking outwards on the appearance and disappearance of thought, while that process is going on, bring your attention to the constant principle, be the constant principle. Be the constant principle. It is I, the knower of ignorance, who is anadi. Before, I was ignorant of what is behind me. Now I know what is behind me. So, who is the constant one? The I. This means that the whole attention is on the truth only and not on the non-essential called the jiva bhava. This is the mistake that every seeker makes. His attention is on the individuality. And individuality is that referential consciousness. Just as with a reference to a woman, a person is a husband, that's referential exists. Referential individual. Come back further, husband cannot be without the man. Who is the man? Body, breath, mind, intellect. Life is expressing through that body, mind, intellect. That consciousness with a reference to body, breath, mind, intellect is called the jiva. And we are obsessed with this body, breath, mind, intellect. And as long as we are taking their support, giving them validity, taking them as the truth, till then truth will not reveal, which you already are. So we have to take the correct stand. This means that the whole attention is on the truth only. And this is what I was talking about. When we say discrimination, discrimination means to separate truth and untruth, to separate the changeless and the changing, to separate the infinite and the finite, to separate the permanent and the impermanent. And begin from wherever you are. If you are in the outside world, space is permanent, everything else in the space is impermanent. Oh, then space. What type of space are there? Oh, there is a waking space, dream space, deep sleep space. Oh, they also come and go. Is the space in the dream the same as the space in the waking? Find out. Or find out the gross space is nothing but an aspect of the mental space. And mental space is just an imagination on the conscious space. Come back to that. So wherever you are, come back. Come back to the constant one. Come back to the unchanging one. We may say, oh, earth is the constant one and we are all walking on it. But earth is also changing continuously. Mountains are being created, mountains are getting, are collapsing. Somewhere islands come out of the oceans, islands merge back into the oceans, into the waters. Continuously the coastline is changing. The land looks like it is the same, but it's continuously changing. The sun looks it is the same, but it is continuously changing. Sometimes there is extra solar flare and sometimes it is not. Solar flare, pandemic begins. So think out of the box and slowly bring your attention to the constant one through proper analysis so that you don't get lost in that analysis ever again. Once only it has to be thoroughly done. It doesn't have to be repeated again and again. एक बार कर लो खत्म. पर हम कुछ भी, we never do anything completely. That is our problem. We don't do it thoroughly. हाँ ठीक है, after some time we will start losing interest in it. If we want to do this thoroughly, then it will be a continuous lecture for a few weeks. You will get tired. So we do it in doses. Therefore, Shuddha Jnanam, pure knowledge, is that which supports both the presence and the absence. I have already said that. Therefore, the word, where are we here? Therefore, the word ignorance, where are we? Wrong conclusion. Verse. This means that the whole attention is on the truth only, and not on the non-essential called the Jiva Bhav. Jiva Bhav is only a ghost. This essential nature is what Bhagwan Krishna reveals practically in every chapter of the Gita. Instead of turning our minds and ears to hear the divine message, we get carried away by desire, etc., as if impelled in spite of ourselves. Give me one moment. He has given chapter 2, verse 20. न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचित् नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः अजो नित्यशाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे. Where did this verse appear apart from Bhagavad Gita chapter 2? Remember?
In Kathopanishad?
Kathopanishad, yes. Just we did it. So what is it? Na jayate mriyate va kadachet. The self is not born and it does not die. Na mriyate va kadachet. Nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuyaha. And it does not again come into existence by being born. The self is birthless and deathless. It is the jiva, this idiot, this pseudo, this ghost who falsely believes, wrongly believes that he is born and he dies. But where is jiva? Go search for him. He will vanish, he'll run away. He cannot stand inquiry. Start searching for him within yourself, because you are the jiva, you are the infinite. When you search for the jiva which seems to be so real, it will vanish away and only the infinite will remain. You are the Gaunatma, you are the Mithyatma, and you are the Mukhyatma. Gaunatma is the relative roles, father, mother, daughter, sister. You search for them, you will find you are the man or the woman. You search for the man or the woman, who is the man and who is the woman, who is this person. You look for that fellow, you will come to the actual you. It cannot stand inquiry. So it is just as the father, brother, the various roles that you play are born and they die with every reference. If the wife is there, the husband is born, and when the wife goes away, husband dies. Then the child comes and the father is born, and the child goes away, the father dies. Means goes out of expression, that is death. Stops manifesting. Similarly, this jiva, the bigger ghost, the illusory ghost, who was appearing as the virtual ones, this illusory ghost, when you start looking at him, what is his nature, he also vanishes. The self is birthless. It is ajo nitya shashvatoyam purana. Ajaha is, he is birthless. Nitya, he is constant, eternal. Shashvatoyam is eternal. And then Purana is that he is the ancient one. Na hanyate hanyamane sharire. It is not slain when the body is slain. The self is not killed when the body is killed. Okay. Then chapter 3, verse 27. Let me check. Where are we? 27. Chapter 3. So, where am I? verse number 27. Prakrute kriyamānāni gunai karmāni sarvashah ahankara vimūಢātma kartāhamiti manyate. Actions are done in all the cases by the gunas of Prakriti. This is what Adhyatma Ramayana also said when Sitaji said that all actions are done by me. I made that infinite Paramatma to appear as Ram. I gave him birth, I will make him grow, I will make him do everything. He is the non-doer. He is the constant one. See? But we take it as a story, we take it very superficially and keep moving on. Aage badho. Tell what happened afterwards. But that is the crux. Ahankara vimūఢātma kartāham iti manyate. And he whose mind is deluded through egoism thinks, I am the doer. There is no doer. This is how Mahatmas live. They see, hear, touch, feel, taste, think. But there is no seer, thinker, taster, feeler, thinker, experiencer, knower. That fellow is missing. Yet everything is going on. And they show it in their life that it is possible. But we are continuously stuck in taking our body, in taking our individuality, our personality as real. And then we start finding causes. I think because when I was a child, this happened, therefore it is. This is how it is. I have become like this. Because of this incident, this happened to me. I've become this type of a person. Where is our attention? Be the untouched one. And you are. Everything is coming and going and you are not disturbed. Every day the waking dream, deep sleep are coming and going. You are not disturbed. Every day when you wake up, the eyes are seeing the whole world. Eyes are not disturbed by what they are seeing. Every day the mind is thinking the thoughts. Mind is not disturbed. Who is disturbed? Find out. Just as water is not disturbed by the coming and going of the waves, ocean is not disturbed by the evaporation of the water and so many billions and billions of gallons of water by way of rivers is being poured into the ocean. Ocean remains the same. Then how come we are disturbed? Continuously the rivers of name and form and colors, the rivers of sound, the rivers of taste, the rivers of smell, the rivers of touch, the rivers of thoughts, they are continuously pouring into the consciousness. If you take yourself to be the conscious, don't be disturbed. But the moment we take ourselves as the individuality, then disturbance is a foregone conclusion. Because our attention is on, my God, I am overwhelmed with all this that is coming to me. That is what leads to anxiety, depression, escapism. See? Then, chapter 4, 9th verse. Chapter 4, 9th verse. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo vetti tattvataha tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti sorjuna. He who thus knows truly my divine birth and work is no more born after death. He attains me, O Arjuna. So we have to come to the correct assessment of the nature of not only the self, but also of the Lord. Because until these questions of what is Jiva, what is Jagat, and what is Ishvara, if these are not sorted out in our mind, there will be no peace. There will be rebirth after rebirth after rebirth. Not only these three questions, but what is the relationship between each other? Till we don't come to this conclusion or realization, this revelation that all these three are one alone. All these three are one alone, in essence. Till then, punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani jathare shayanam. Instead of turning our mind and ears to hear the divine message, we get carried away by desires, etc., as if impelled in spite of ourselves. And that is because we have given validity to these desires, we have given validity to the Jiva Bhav, we have given validity to the personality, we have given validity to the individuality, and continuously we are, sucking, क्या बोलेंगे, nourishing that individuality by way of health, by way of removing the disease, by way of I am sick, I am afraid, I am, God, why the world, why am I born in this world when it is all so much turmoil? Mind finds different way, the individuality finds different ways. Understand, individuality or the ego, its food is objectivity. Its food is the limitations. It will keep thinking again and again and again and again and again, because that is his diet. You starve the fellow. Or one is you understand the true nature of the I, which is the constant principle. Or if you are not able to do that, starve the I. How do you starve the I? That is the whole process of Bhagavad Gita. Starve the I of the future, starve the I of the past. Then what is in the present? Starve the I of the senses by controlling the senses. Starve the I of the thoughts by directing the thoughts towards the divine. Even though you don't know the divine, think of the divine. Or do the inquiry, who is this one who is whom I am trying to starve? The I itself will vanish as a thought, as a personality, as a phenomena, as an individuality. First the Gaunatma will vanish, then the Mithyatma will vanish. Meaning, whether they are not there, you are not affected. See? This is the process. And you don't need to go through process. Now, Ramchandra ji, when he heard the Yoga Vashishta, he didn't go through any process. When Arjuna heard the Bhagavad Gita, he did not go through any process. He did not practice anything. Either you be completely devoted and surrendered to the divine principle, or you inquire into the divine principle. What is its nature? You will come to the constant one. If at all there is a desire, let that desire be to know the constant one. Our desire is, like I'm in Sydney, one day Thai, one day coffee, one day hot chocolate, one day upma, one day this. Indulging. I'll come back fat. Huh? What is that fat? Fat ego. See? Starve it of all diet, starve it of all nourishment. The only nourishment, if at all, you give to the eye is self contemplation, inquiring into its true nature. That is the only diet. Everything else, be ruthless. The ignorance has value only in the realm of ignorance is explained in the third OV. Today I have another lecture at 10:30, 11 and I have to drive somewhere. So we'll look at this verse in our next class. We'll conclude here today. Just sit quietly for a few moments and then Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Hari Om everyone. Thank you.
Hari Om Swamiji.